Hi everyone. Welcome to this lecture of the Self-Knowledge course. In this lecture we will learn how to develop a faculty that is latent in each one of us, and that allows us to receive and understand the wisdom and guidance that our inner being is constantly giving us. That faculty is intuition. Intuition is the means of expression of consciousness. It is the ability to know without thinking. When we learn to silence our mind, we can get to know everything, because we can connect directly with the Father, who is wisdom, who has his seat in the superior intellectual center at the level of the pineal gland, and his wisdom will manifest in our heart through intuition. Intuition comes to our hearts as a certainty, as something we simply know. Many times, we receive warnings, through intuition, regarding some imminent danger. And if we follow the intuitions of our heart, then we can get out of complicated situations well. But the important thing when intuition arrives is not to start reasoning with our minds, but to immediately act. If we let doubt, reasoning or justifications enter our minds, we end up losing that certainty, or clarity, that we had, and we fall into the confusion of the ego, and therefore into error. It is important to know that intuition cannot do any harm, since it is the only faculty that cannot be taken over by the ego. Therefore, it is the only faculty that we can seek to develop from the beginning of the inner work. The other faculties, such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, telepathy, etc., are faculties that if we develop them in the current egoic state in which we find ourselves, they will be managed by our psychological defects, and therefore can lead us to make serious mistakes. That is why it is important to understand that it must be our inner being, who as we advance in our inner work, gives us these faculties, when he considers that we are already capable of managing them consciously. But being the intuition, not only harmless, since it cannot be taken by the ego, but also very useful to receive the wisdom of our own being, it is important to develop it. And in this conference, we will learn how. First, let's talk a little about what intuition is for. The development of our intuition brings us benefits both physically and internally. On the physical plane, it will be of great help to us when we have to make a decision. Usually, when we are faced with a problem or a dilemma, what we do is to overthink and contrast and try to make a correct decision. However, if in those moments we silence the mind, applying psychological death, we can intuitively feel in our hearts what we should do. Also, as I told you before, it helps us to get rid of dangers. When we are going to take a path and we feel that in our hearts, that makes us feel that we shouldn't take that path, there is intuition alerting us. Through intuition we can locate ourselves when we are in an unknown place. Guided by intuition we can find some place we are looking for. It also helps us a lot in the sacrifice for humanity. Through intuition we can feel where and to whom to teach this knowledge. And many times we are teaching, and right there we receive directly from the being, in an intuitive way, an answer or information in relation to the topic that we are delivering, or in relation to the question that someone asks us. Through intuition we can understand the symbolism in sacred texts. So it is essential when we understand the need to stop reading sacred texts as dead letters. And it helps us understand clearly the different phenomena that manifest in the physical world. In the internal worlds it will also be of great help to us to develop intuition, since intuition allows us to interpret the symbolic language with which they speak to us in the astral world. Therefore, we will be able to interpret very clearly, and even right there. During the astral experience, we will be able to understand the meaning of the symbolism that they show us. But also in reflective meditation, the development of intuition is very useful to us, since it will allow us to understand our psychological defects in greater depth, and to be able to intuit the relationships that exist between some psychological defects and others. Through intuition we can realize when recurrences come to us, and we can transcend them. These are just some of the benefits of developing intuition, as it really helps us with many things, having that constant access to the wisdom of consciousness. Now, it is important to differentiate between intuition, hunch and feeling or presentiment. The hunch is rather an instinctive call, more developed in people who have greater contact with nature, and who feel instinctively, for example, when there will be bad or good weather, or when a person or animal is going to get sick, etc. The hunch comes from that learning that through experience was recorded in our instinct during our passage through the different kingdoms of nature, but it will never be as precise as the information we can receive from consciousness. The feeling is emotional. Through a feeling or presentiment, we can feel that something is going to happen. But since our emotion is invaded by many psychological defects, there is no certainty in the presentiment. There is usually doubt, anguish, concern, uncertainty included in that feeling. Intuition, on the other hand, is that certainty that we receive as an intuitive knock in our heart. So, let's see how we can develop intuition. Intuition is developed through the practice of the 3 factors of consciousness revolution. The practice of psychological death will allow us to free and silence our mind, which is what constantly blocks our access to the wisdom of our inner being. The spiritual birth will allow us to heal and integrate our mental part, and will help us build a clearer access to the superior dimensions. And the sacrifice for humanity will give us the merits of the heart to do that work. At the same time, we will help activate intuition by chanting the following mantra daily for 20 minutes. While we chant this mantra, we can imagine the heart chakra, which is a disc with 12 petals. Here you can have an idea of what that chakra looks like. You imagine it in front of you, at heart level, and imagine how, while you chant the mantra, it turns in the direction in which the hands of the clock turn, as if you were looking at it in front of you. You imagine how that disc is turning with its 12 petals. This simple practice is very helpful to develop intuition. The important thing is to practice it. Since this knowledge only as a theory doesn't work, we need to put it into practice, so that it becomes a wisdom in us. And well, this is Conference 20 of Phase B. In the next conference, the 21st, we will speak about the intimate Christ and the death of the causal selves. A very important conference that will help us understand why it is so necessary to take the direct path and allow the Christ to be born in our hearts. Thank you very much. See you next time.